I accidentally flooded part of my Lasius colony's nest this week. And instead of panicking, they built a dam, an actual functional dam, out of stone to stop the water from spreading. I've been wondering for weeks why they kept piling stones in the corners of the enclosure, and this week I finally got my answer. That's just one part of a genuinely eventful week, so let's get into it. Hello everyone, and welcome back to another weekly ant update. We've got colony expansion, a bit of chaos during cleaning, some behind-the-scenes food prep, and an honestly impressive display of ant problem solving. Let's start, as always, with a quick check-in on the mealworm beetles. If you remember, I recently got my first mealworm beetle, with the hope of eventually breeding a self-sustaining feeder insect colony, instead of constantly buying mealworms. Well, the beetle population is growing, which is great news, but it comes with a bit of a side effect I wasn't fully prepared for. Mess. As mealworms pupate and transform into adult beetles, they shed their old exoskeletons in the process, and those leftover skins are now scattered around their enclosure area. It's a completely normal part of the molting and metamorphosis process. Insects can't just grow their exoskeleton like we grow skin, so they periodically shed the old, rigid outer layer to allow for the next stage of development. But it does mean I need to go in and clean up that area a bit more regularly now that there are more of them going through this cycle at once. Small maintenance task, but definitely something to stay on top of if this breeding project is going to work long term. Now let's move on to the Messor Barbarus colony because there's a lot to cover here. Overall, this colony continues to do incredibly well. Honestly, at this point, it feels like every single update I give you starts with some version of "they're doing even better than last week." And this week is no exception. One interesting thing I noticed, though, is that they've started storing seeds near the egg area, sort of mixed in close to where the brood is kept. At first, I wasn't sure what to make of that. It's possible this is just a food storage decision. Ants do often create dedicated storage zones for cracked seeds and other food reserves, close to the areas where they're needed most, especially as a colony scales up and organizes its space more efficiently. But it's also very possible this is simply a space issue. With how much this colony has grown, they may genuinely be running out of usable chamber space, and seeds are ending up wherever there's room, even if that's not the ideal long-term location. Because of that, I've decided that next week I'm going to expand the chambers to give them more room to actually organize things properly. Giving a colony this size more physical space to work with should help them separate food storage from brood care again, the way you'd expect in a more established nest layout. And it should also just generally reduce overcrowding stress. But I'll be honest, even with this chamber expansion, if they keep growing at the rate they've been growing, they are going to need a full upgrade to a larger enclosure at some point relatively soon. This has been building for a few updates now, and I think we're getting close to that point. On the more chaotic side of things this week, I went in to clean the outworld area, which I try to do regularly to keep leftover seed husks and food debris from piling up too much. And let's just say the colony was not thrilled about it. Every time I reached in with the tweezers to clear things out, workers would come rushing over and straight up attack the tweezers. Not me, thankfully, just the tool itself. But it turned what should have been a quick 5-minute cleaning job into a much more careful, slower process. This is actually a pretty normal defensive response. Messor Barbarus workers, especially the larger ones, will readily bite and even try to sting anything they perceive as a threat near the colony. And a foreign metal object suddenly moving around in their territory absolutely counts. It's a good reminder of just how defensive and food protective this species can get once a colony reaches a certain size and confidence level. I also filmed a short clip this week of how I prepare food for them, since a few of you have asked about my feeding process in the comments. For the mealworm specifically, I cut the head off before feeding them in, which helps prevent them from trying to burrow away or wander off before the ants get to them. And it also makes it easier and faster for the workers to actually process them once they're brought back to the nest. I also pour hot water over the mealworms briefly before feeding, which serves a couple purposes. It kills the mealworm quickly and humanely, And it also helps reduce the risk of any parasites or bacteria being introduced into the colony through the feeder insects. A lot of keepers use a similar method, since feeding live, fully mobile prey items directly into an enclosure can occasionally introduce more risk than it's worth, especially for a colony this large and active. Alright, now let's get into the Lasius Niger colony, because this week gave us honestly one of the coolest moments I've had with this species so far. Like I usually do, I went in to switch out their water source to keep it fresh, something I do on a regular rotation to make sure they always have access to clean water without letting old water sit and stagnate. This time though, I made a small mistake during the process and ended up causing a little bit of a leak. Water started spreading slightly more than it should have inside part of the setup. Normally, that kind of mistake makes me a little nervous, since excess water can be genuinely dangerous for an ant colony, flooding tunnels, drowning brood, or creating dangerously high humidity levels in areas that aren't supposed to be that wet. But what happened next is honestly the most impressive thing I've seen this colony do. Almost immediately, workers started moving stone pieces, the same small stones I keep in their enclosure as decor and additional structure, into the path of the spreading water. And it worked. The stones acted like a genuine dam, physically blocking and slowing the water from spreading further into the rest of the setup. This is when it clicked for me. For weeks now, I've noticed this colony periodically moving and piling small stones into the corners of their enclosure, and honestly, I never really understood why. I just assumed it was some kind of general nest organizing behavior, or maybe just incidental movement while they were doing something else. But now I think I finally understand what was actually going on. It's very possible that at some point, without me even realizing it, this enclosure experienced a minor flooding event, maybe from a slightly overfilled water dish, or condensation buildup, or another small mistake like the one I made this week, and the colony responded by proactively building small stone barriers in vulnerable corners as a preventative flood defense. Essentially, they may have been quietly engineering their own environment this whole time to reduce the risk of water damage, and I just wasn't putting the pieces together until I watched it happen in real time this week. Ants engineering their environment. Like this isn't actually as far-fetched as it might sound. Many ant species are known to physically modify their nest structure in response to environmental stressors, digging additional drainage channels, sealing off vulnerable entrances, as we've actually seen this exact Lasius colony do earlier this season, or repositioning nest material to manage moisture and temperature. It's a form of what's sometimes called extended phenotype behavior, where the physical structure an animal builds around itself becomes almost an extension of its own biology and survival strategy. Watching this colony apply that same logic to something as specific as flood prevention, using literal stones as barriers, was genuinely one of the more fascinating things I've documented on this channel. After the minor flooding, I checked in on the rest of the colony to make sure everyone was okay, and thankfully it looks like the response worked exactly as intended. Workers, brood, and the queen all relocated to the higher, drier sections of the enclosure while the water was being contained. And once things settled and I cleaned up the excess water properly, everyone moved back to their normal areas without any issues. No losses, no visible stress beyond the initial response, just a colony calmly solving a problem and then going right back to business as usual. It's moments like this that remind me why I love documenting these colonies week to week. On paper, ants move some stones. Doesn't sound like much. But when you understand the context, weeks of quietly building preventative infrastructure, then watching it activate in real time to protect the nest, it's genuinely impressive behavior from a creature most people walk past without a second thought. So to wrap up this week, the mealworm beetle colony is growing, which means a bit more regular cleanup. but it's a good sign for that self-sustaining food source project. The Messor Barbarus colony continues its rapid growth, storing seeds near the brood, likely due to space constraints, prompting a chamber expansion next week and probably a full enclosure upgrade in the near future. Cleaning day turned into a bit of a battle with some very defensive tweezer-hating workers, and I also showed you a behind-the-scenes look at food prep. And the Lasius Niger colony had its biggest moment yet, revealing what was likely a proactive, engineered flood defense system that's apparently been in the works for weeks, all triggered by one small watering mistake on my end. Let me know in the comments if you've ever seen your own colony do something like this, moving materials specifically to manage water or moisture. And if you've had to expand or upgrade an enclosure recently, I'd love to hear how you approached it, since that's clearly coming up for me very soon with the Messor colony. Thank you all so much for watching and for continuing to support this channel every single week. It genuinely means a lot, especially on weeks like this one where there's this much going on. If you enjoyed this update, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. I read every single one of them, and I try to reply to as many as I can. The workers, the queens, and I wish you an amazing week. See you in the next update.